Okay, y'all. We are officially live.
Woohoo!
Yay!
Yay!
Yay! Okay. So we're just gonna go ahead and get started. Just wanted to say hi to everybody that's tuning in with us. Thanks so much for taking some time. We hope you have some kind of beverage. We all have our beverage of choice this morning. We're accusing Sarah of day drinking already.
I'm not.
She's not.
I'm not.
She's not.
Water.
So for those of you who haven't met all of us or know some of us, we are all Knoxville or Knoxville adjacent wedding vendors. And we kind of cover a whole gamut of different specialties. We've got floral represented bridal venues, paper goods, rentals, photography. So our goal here is just to offer ourselves up to answer questions, hopefully to provide a little bit of assurance and calm in a time that feels really wild.
Yeah.
This is something, and we can all speak to this individually, but we've all been in the wedding world for different amounts of time, and I can definitely say that this is the first event of its kind that I've ever had to walk through with clients. So we just first and foremost want those of you tuning in to know that we just feel for you and we're here for you. This is new, and we want to offer up the insight that we have to walk you through this. So we're going to basically start with just a little intro from everybody. We can kind of go through my grid maybe and introduce ourselves and who we are, what our experience in weddings looks like. So Lauren, why don't we start with you?
Okay. Hi, I'm Lauren. I'm the owner and head designer of Wither and Bloom Designs. So I'm primarily a wedding and event florist. And I've owned my business officially now for a year. But before that, I worked full-time as a designer at a flower shop in Knoxville. So I've kind of had a wide range of exposure to weddings, like anything as big as, a huge wedding, as small as, smaller parties, and then daily arrangements as well. So I love flowers, and I love working with clients and helping them, maybe put into words and then bring to life what they want their wedding flowers to look like and how they want it to make their wedding feel or their event feel. So I'm excited to be here, and yeah, thanks for having me.
Awesome. I'll say hi. I'm Erin McCall. I have been photographing weddings since 2012. I'm from the Nashville area, but have moved to Knoxville, and I'm East Tennessee based now. And I'm so thankful to do what I do. A lot of my work is here in Knoxville, but I travel as well. So I'm excited to talk to both brides working with photographers that are nearby, local vendors, but also it's a very common thing to have a photographer travel to you for your event. So I've got experience in both of those places and would love to talk through any questions our couples may have today. Sarah?
Hey all, I'm Sarah Pattison. I'm owner and creative director of The Happy Envelope, which is a stationery design company here in Knoxville. We're also a letterpress print studio, so that's sort of our specialty. We have been in business for 17 years. My husband and I work together, and so yeah, a lot of experience with weddings, and this is definitely our first pandemic experience. So happy to be here and share what we have learned and how we can hopefully help sort of guide you and be a guiding hand during this time in terms of informing your guests and keeping them apprised of your situation.
Awesome. Madelyn?
Hi, so I'm Madelyn Cunningham. I'm the owner of Kindred Bridal. We have been open since October of 2018. And yes, my first experience with this as well, and I'm still just getting a hang of just this whole business thing in general. But I started out as a model in the bridal industry, worked really closely with a lot of designers, and sort of found this niche, independent designer bridal world that I really loved, that put faces to the names of the designers and weren't kind of this big design name that you always heard of, but you didn't know the person behind. But instead, I got to meet these designers who were designing out of their studios in Brooklyn or out of their homes in Charleston, and started working closely with them and loving that close relationship. And then being able to have their gowns in my store and work closely with them to customize a lot of things. And so that's kind of how I got into the industry and got to really get educated on design and fabrics and this whole independent bridal world that I really love and love to represent. So that's me, and I'm hoping that I can, answer questions from what to do if you are a bride who has not received her gown yet and it's delayed, all the way to kind of restyling your look if you've had to push into a different season.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Hey, Katie.
Hi, I'm Katie Stinnett. I do all of the sales and marketing at RT Lodge, which is a local venue. And I also oversee all of the events there. So I am just here as a resource if anyone has questions about the venue side of things, the planning side of things. And hopefully I'll be able to help with that.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. And then we'll finish up with Beth and Sylvie.
Hi, my name is Beth Holman, and this is Sylvie.
Sylvie.
And I own the McCabe company, which is a luxury event rental source here in Knoxville. Sylvie and I both worked at a resort called Blackberry Farm for a long time. I did the events for almost a decade there, and just sort of noticed a huge gap in the market for nicer rental items to elevate your event. And so I started it about 6 months ago. So I'm still learning the whole business aspect of everything as well. And obviously not an ideal time for this to happen. But, we are navigating it as well as we can, and work extremely close with Katie at RT Lodge and other vendors, and just sort of all holding each other's hands during this to ensure that we can be a guiding light for our clients. So
Mm-hmm. That's great. So I want to move into a time of, clients that are now finding themselves in this new circumstance. There are so many moving parts to hosting a wedding, and the sense that I'm getting from a lot of clients is, okay, if I fall within this group of weddings that needs to be changed, what's my first move? Where do I go from here? And I'd love to kind of hear from each of us what you would say a great first step is in each of our worlds when it comes to postponing a wedding, moving things, shifting things. Kind of what would you say is first plan of attack in your world when it comes to a postponement? And let's just go back through our grid and each kind of speak our piece. Lauren, we can start with you again.
Great. As far as postponements go from a floral end, the first thing that comes to my mind that I would say, kind of like, if you're considering this, even if you are just considering it, just be open to starting that conversation specifically with all of your vendors. But from a floral end, I will say that every florist, works with different wholesalers, and every wholesaler at this time, which is where we buy our flowers, every wholesaler is kind of taking a different approach to when you cannot get things refunded at this time. So I would say just as soon as the thought crosses your mind that I may postpone, just go ahead and touch base with your florist. So then you can make sure that the florist doesn't purchase flowers without being able to be refunded. And then that will save you money in the end, as well as the florist. So, and it'll just make everything much smoother. So I can say for me, I order from a couple different wholesalers, depending on where I'm working, as well as what kind of event it is. And some of them require a 2 weeks notice. Others I have to actually now pay up front 50%. And if I don't let them know within 3 weeks, then I will have to pay them the full amount and still receive the flowers even if the event is canceled. So again, if you have to cancel sooner or closer to the event than 2 to 3 weeks, we can absolutely work something out. But at this time, it seems like most people are kind of questioning maybe a month or two out. So just go ahead and touch base with your florist so that, you know, we aren't losing money on flowers and I guess preventing as many costs from happening that don't need to happen. That's the number one, that would be my first step with clients. Just kind of putting pause on the flower order. And then we can reassess if it's still going to happen, we absolutely can move forward with it. And if it doesn't need to happen, we can make sure that new seasonal flowers are ordered for your rescheduled event. So that would be great.
And that, in a way, translates pretty directly to what I would first tell a client too, that just getting in touch and touching base with your photographer as quickly as you can is huge, because with us, we're a vendor that, like your venue, and Katie can speak to this as well, we either are available for your date or we are not. So getting a sense of your photographer's later availability is huge. Because for most people, photography is a choice that feels pretty emotional and feels really stylistically specific, that you probably chose your photographer because you love the look or the feel of their photos. You love their perspective. Maybe you've met with them in person and you know that you're going to spend a ton of time with this person. So you really want that relationship to feel comfortable. So if it feels like photography is going to be a priority and something that you kind of want to make a key vendor, it's going to be important to, as quickly as possible. I've been getting some really great emails from clients that are on the fence, not even sure if they fall within an event that will need to be rescheduled, but they've just simply asked me, give me all of the dates that you're available for the rest of 2020. And that way they have that on hand, and that can be a resource for them to check on as they start to process this. And I certainly would be more than happy to keep your name penciled in on that date so that I know, okay, this couple is considering moving. That way, if I get other inquiries for that date, you'll be the first to know, and we can have that conversation, cross that bridge when we come to it. Sarah, what would you say?
Well, I might actually kind of breeze over this one because I feel like for what we do, it's very specific. It depends on whether you've sent a save the date or an invitation yet, whether you haven't. And we're able to accommodate a lot in terms of helping you navigate that because we don't actually have to be present there on the day of. So first step would definitely be talking to these other people who have to be there on the day of and getting that coordinated. I think next step, once you've decided that you are changing your date, you are postponing, that's when you're going to want to pick up the phone and call me. And then we have plenty of solutions, and I'll go over those in answering another question, I think more specifically about how to let your guests know. But we don't need to be a first consideration, I think.
That's great. And I think that's helpful too for couples to even have in their minds, okay, these are my first 5 phone calls. This is who I need to call. And then once these decisions are made, we'll pull in
That's right.
the next level. Madelyn, what would you say?
Yeah, I'm on the same page with Sarah in that although the gown that I've provided you and that we've worked together on is present the day of, this is something that is worked on. I have brides who shop like 18 months in advance at times. And so, postponing your wedding, really, if you already have your gown in hand, then like, great, you have your gown in hand. What I would recommend at that point is postponing your alterations. Most people really aren't able to get alterations at this time anyway, because you're working really closely and we obviously need to stay apart. So I wouldn't do, like, as soon as things are back up and running again, I wouldn't get your alterations. I always like to get them closer to your wedding. That way, if you have bodily changes or anything. So I would shift that timeline. But, our goal always is to have the gown in our bride's hands at least 12 weeks before their wedding. And so these brides that have had March, April, May weddings, maybe June, luckily we've already been able to get their gown in their hands, and that's good to go. And as far as postponing it, I can answer in a different way maybe later on about like how to transition your wedding, gown from spring to fall or summer to winter. But definitely I think there is a hierarchy of really contacting those day of vendors to maybe, look at all of their availability and getting a calendar from your photographer, from your venue, from your rentals, and looking, and is there a common date that everyone is available? Okay, there you go. Is that, but just as Sarah, we really work mostly on the front end. And it's a kind of a different formula for how to handle things than day of vendors.
Mm-hmm. And that hierarchy that Madelyn's talking about, I would imagine, Katie, over at RT Lodge, you are, if not the first, you're one of the first calls that couples are making right now.
Yeah, I think if you aren't working with a planner and you're doing things on your own, probably the venue is the first person you need to contact. Once you find out from your venue what dates they have, I think it's easier to send an email out to vendors and say, are you available these dates for our venue? Or if it's not your venue, that's first priority, and that's something that can switch. If it's photography, get your photographer's dates that they have open and then plan accordingly with those dates. I think getting in touch with your vendors as soon as you are even considering, like Lauren said, I think that's important, because we've had brides who 3 weeks ago said, if I were to change to this date, what would that look like? And we've talked to them. Then we immediately reached out to their vendors and said, hey, if this happens, what can you do? So then the second the bride called us this week, like we had 2 different ones that were waiting. We had 2 brides that called this week and said, okay, I'm ready to move. And we were able to say, great, your vendors are available on this date. Yeah. So I think just exactly what Lauren said, if the thought is in your head, be proactive, then you have options.
Exactly.
Totally. Give yourself as much flexibility as possible rather than putting yourself in a tougher position and having fewer choices down the road.
And I think also, and I normally wouldn't say this, except for this as a different circumstance. I think it's important to make sure your whole wedding party and your family is available. But I think instead of saying like, Mom, Dad, these are the 8 dates that my photographer is available, I think hone in on like 2 or 3 that could work. I think that's what worked well for us when we were postponing with brides. We said like, your vendors are available, all of them are available on these 2 dates. Mm-hmm. Instead of like, hey, we have 10 dates, which one works? It's kind of more chaotic that way. Mm-hmm. I feel like kind of having like maybe 2 or 3 backup dates that are high priority that you're talking to your family about instead of summer 2020. I think kind of having plan B, C, and D.
Totally.
That's a great point. And I love seeing too, I think couples are often really surprised and really touched by when there are 2 dates on the table and we're asking all of our family and wedding party about these 2 dates. It's pretty incredible to watch the way those VIP people really just make a date work and will do anything that they can to be there. And they're in their your wedding party because they're a core person and they will do whatever's in their power to be there. Okay, so let's wrap this little piece up with Beth and Sylvie from a rentals perspective. What would be your first?
Yeah, I feel like we're kind of like a combo of everyone because we're a product, also a service. So we are important to get in touch with if you have certain elements that are emotional connection with, almost like the photographer. I mean, they fall in love with a charger or, a couch or whatever it may be. So I feel like we are, you would probably want to reach out to us pretty quickly to ensure that the products that you want at your event are available on the date that you're postponing to. So it's just a domino effect of because we do, we take deposits, we do design plans and so forth for clients. So we want to make sure that everyone's happy. And the other part of the product piece is with the trickle effect of what's happening, we have products on order that we don't know are going to come in or not. So that's sort of a reality of this situation that is also a disappointment, I would think, for sure. So making sure that you get in touch with us is probably pretty important if you're looking for still that certain aesthetic. We have no idea how to navigate through this right now as well, just because we don't know how people are if they're going to tailor down, if they're going to blow it out of the water now that we can all touch each other again, or whatever that looks like. So, but, if you're specifically looking for products that you want from us on a switch date, it would be pretty important to touch base on that new date.
Mm-hmm. We have gotten some really great and really specific questions from couples. We've kind of compiled a really great list here. So these will just be open to anyone on the panel that feels they've got a little tidbit to provide. We'll start with, what is going to be the practical difference between a postponement and a cancellation for couples? I can start with that one. Because these are unprecedented times, I think a lot of your wedding vendors, you'll find, are taking a step back, looking at their policies in a new light these days. And I can say for me, and this is kind of a trend that I'm seeing in wedding photography generally, deposits are going to be non-refundable across the board is typically something you can expect, certainly from photographers, and I would imagine from most of your wedding vendors. However, for me, in normal circumstances, if a couple were to reach out and say, we've had a change of heart, we think we want this date instead, after we've signed our contract and put a deposit down, typically there's going to be a fee to reschedule. And that just as a result of, I've lost opportunities to take other couples' weddings on your original date. Because in these times, this is a brand new circumstances, I'm waiving all of my change fees, and couples are welcome to pick a new date whenever they feel comfortable. And their original deposit will simply be transferred over to their new date. So essentially there's no cost on the client's end for that reschedule. Also, if we look into the future, photographers' prices tend to trend upward over time. We'll have, increases as our experience and the scope of our work changes. I will be honoring the price point that you booked me with originally, just to keep that in mind. With a cancellation, the sad thing is going to be that deposits are non-refundable. So on my part, I'm doing whatever we can to pursue reschedules across the board. Yeah, pretty straightforward with me. What about with other vendors?
I'll chime in. I mean, as my kids are yelling in the background. Sylvie, why don't you talk to them about how design changes from season to season with weddings? So if we're purchasing a certain item for someone and we receive a deposit, go ahead.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a whole other thing that I'm sure, especially Madelyn with the dress, I guess kind of everything, honestly, flowers as well too. If you were originally going to do summer 2020, because we have several, like we were saying earlier, move from April, March, May to end of summer, but then also the other chunk is going from right now to just straight November, December. So I mean, that changes absolutely everything. So we've kind of just been doing the same thing, just, kind of moving, your deposit has already held your spot. You're just moving that down. we haven't had any yet. I know we will definitely, we're having some coming up that like I said, they'll be completely different aesthetic, different time of year, absolutely everything. So we haven't crossed that bridge yet. I know it's soon, it's about to happen. But yeah, kind of just the same boat. Like, and again with that, because we have a bunch of summer pieces we've ordered, which now it's not going to be a summer wedding, and we don't know when we will be getting it. Can we, return it, or things of that nature? So I think that's still just week by week planning.
I would say my policies are pretty similar to Erin's of the difference between a postponement and reschedule a cancellation and a postponement would be cancellation. Typically, if you were to cancel not during something like this pandemic, we would have to be discussing, your final payment you would still have to honor your final payment even if you canceled. So I completely understand. I've made time to talk with other vendors to see sort of what are other vendors doing. So I know all of us vendors have been reaching out to fellow vendors in our field, and that's definitely something you all can be comforted by. Is I have a strong feeling most of us aren't just making these decisions on our own. We're trying to work with other vendors to see what's a universal thing. I know I've talked to people in other cities and states about what they do, and universally I'm seeing if you cancel, we just are a 1 to 2 to maybe 5 to 10 man show. I'm only a 1-man show unless I hire freelancers. And so, we unfortunately do need to keep that 50% deposit if it's a cancellation, but I'm definitely waiving any additional fees if we're rescheduling, and would love to, talk about rescheduling. And luckily all my clients thus far have been working toward a reschedule. So I've been really appreciative of that, and definitely seen our community coming together for sure.
That's great.
For us
Katie,
at the Lodge, we have been able to, as of today, we have postponed 11 weddings. No one has canceled or even mentioned canceling at this point. I think most brides now more than ever are excited about their wedding, and it's planned. They've dreamt it. They're ready to do it. So we do have a few brides who have gone forward and are doing like a small ceremony with just their parents or just an officiant on their original wedding day. And then they're planning to have their wedding weekend at the Lodge just be a huge celebration. But I think we were really lucky that we were able to keep all of our brides so far. Most of them moved to this summer, and then we've had a few that are doing the exact date or the exact weekend for next year. So for us, we were able to just apply their deposit toward the new weekend. So that worked well for us. We haven't had to cross any bridges of people asking to cancel, thankfully, at this point. From a venue perspective, we had already made the decision if there was a couple who absolutely couldn't do their wedding, we were going to refund the deposit. But we're in a different position than most vendors. So I would say out of us rescheduling 11 weddings and speaking to probably close to 80 vendors, every photographer I've talked to, every florist I've talked to are doing the exact same thing that you all are doing. And that would be, trying to apply that deposit to a new date. But thankfully, I think our couples are understanding and realize that that deposit held a date for you and work has already been done for your wedding. So I think more than ever, I've noticed that people are super gracious with their vendors, and the vendors have been super gracious with us and each other. And it's been really uplifting for us to see the whole community band together. Like the whole wedding industry, I feel like has really gotten each other's backs, and it's been a really smooth process, which could be normally a nightmare, but I feel like all of the vendors are understanding, and I feel like all of the brides have been understanding. So one thing I wanted to say was that we had a date that would work for 2 different brides. And I talked to one of the brides and said, hey, I know August 15th works for you, but I have a bride who that's the only date that would actually work for her vendors. And she was like, give it to the other bride. We'll take the July date.
Oh, nice.
And I just feel like, It's what's getting us through. Is our vendors and our clients have been so kind and so patient, and it makes a difference. So I think just like giving grace to everyone that's trying to help you, it pays it forward.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Katie, I think that's interesting too, you mentioning couples that have been close enough to their wedding date that they were essentially planned. They were ready to go. It was just a matter of, we have X number of weeks until it's the big day. Do you think now those couples having rescheduled, do you anticipate a lot of tweaks and maybe additions and changes to their event plan now that they have additional time?
Yes and no. I know that florists are having to rework what's in season. And I know some brides are probably changing, if they're doing a spring wedding with blooming branches, Lauren, like that's not going to be around in August, but I think that's going to be probably one of the harder parts. And then for us really on the lodge side, we'll have to tweak our menus because different things are in season for our chef. But I mean, at this point, I feel like we're going to have some downtime before our weddings actually happen. So it kind of works out because like our chef right now is able to sit down and he's going to be able to reach out to every couple and say, okay, tomatoes are in season now, so let's talk about your menu. And I'm sure florists, I feel like, are going to have, florists, the design, if you were having a spring wedding and now you're having fall, definitely the fill you were going for with like rentals or your dress, I feel like they're going to have more work on their plate than we are, other than just tweaking menus.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, similarly to what the chef was saying, of just, I feel the same of whenever I talk with clients, I always have just been saying once the reschedule has happened, mostly for at this time I'm having spring going to like more of a summer feel or early fall. And I'm just telling them, when you're ready, we've got time, let's just get on the calendar. And basically it's not going to have to be a full redesign because we already know the numbers, but I can come to the table with some encouraging ideas of how to, some photos ready to talk about. And I think in that time, it can be like disappointing if you had, you planned a spring wedding for a reason. So I'm sad as a florist because spring is a wonderful time of year to have blooming branches and certain spring flowers. But I can speak for myself and just say, I'll come to a meeting with a lot of great energy to discuss some new flowers maybe you weren't familiar with that we'll be able to incorporate, and ways to slightly tweak your color palette to make it appropriate for spring, but still match your bridesmaids' dresses and your rentals and things like that. So
one more note I was going to say, I feel like this is a time more than ever that our couples need the vendors to help guide them. Yeah. I don't feel like a bride who's planned for a spring wedding wants to go back to the drawing board with her flowers, like you were saying. Like, I think this is a good time to trust the vendors that you have and let them say, okay, you were planning for a spring wedding, now you have a fall wedding, let me show you the options. Let me help you tweak that. I think this is a good time to let the vendor step in and help you, instead of thinking like, oh no, my wedding's now in November, I have to start completely over. You don't. You have these vendors that you've trusted in place, and they're going to hold your hand and guide you and help you tweak those plans. So you don't need to be concerned about completely replanning the entire wedding.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. I think on that note, from a rental perspective, we were supposed to have a wedding today, lots of pinks, lots of everything, and she's actually postponed it to December. So I agree with that, Katie. I think, we 100% will just go ahead with a palette that she loved so much that could honestly work in December still, with just maybe more bold touches of color. And to incorporate it into it, so it doesn't have to be a full redesign.
Yes,
like you said, Lauren, too.
Yeah, absolutely.
While we're here, sorry, go ahead.
Can I just add? I think that what Katie said is critical, because what we're talking about is working with vendors that you have you chose them because you liked them. I mean, maybe you liked their work, but you also liked who they are. And that's a huge part of the reason you chose these vendors, is because you trust them. Our mission statement at the Happy Envelope is to be a guiding hand and provide peace of mind through all of life's occasions, which is about so much more than designing beautiful invitations. Our job all of us here, our job is to walk you through these decisions. And so I hope that as a bride, you've chosen people that you can pick up the phone and call, or you can email them and you're going to get a response. That's what you get when you work with real people. And so I hope that you're feeling encouraged by that. Like, oh my gosh, I chose real people. I can have some help. You have help. You have help. Every single person here and every person in a local wedding industry we are just dying to help you. And we're so glad to be here to do that for you. So it's actually just a challenge that we're ready to take on.
Yeah, I will piggyback on that really quickly. Yeah, this is your customer service hotline. All of us, right? And, you know, I am sure, I know at least Sarah, maybe even McCabe, you know, you guys, I don't know if there's competition with online sales and all these things, but that is, you know, like I said, we are your customer service hotline. And what I've told my brides now, my brides can be in a variety of different positions. They already have their gown and they're postponing, or they're like that funky, like May, June, July bride right now who like really doesn't know what to do. And they don't have their gown because it was supposed to come in April or March. And it hasn't come in yet. Is it going to come in? And so there's a lot of different scenarios. And what I've told each of my brides, and I'm sure what you guys have told yours, is that every single one is different. Every single one has a different aesthetic they're going for. I'm sourcing from designers who are sourcing from, you know, their fabric from different places. And so each and every bride is different. Everyone's solution is going to be different. Everyone's pivot is going to be different. And so I just told them, I said, this is new for me. This is new for you and everyone else in the entire world. I am here to like guide you and to hold your hand, and we're going to figure this out together.
Yes.
Does that mean we're going to add sleeves to your spring wedding gown that's now transitioning to fall? Sure. Does that mean I'm going to make sure that your spring gown doesn't have a slit anymore because maybe that's not appropriate for winter? Yes. Or maybe it means like something's caught up and we need to figure out like an off-the-rack option for you, and I'm going to waive every fee that I can to make sure it's in your hands. Like ultimately, you know, because you're working with real people who are local, who care about you and your wedding and who want to find a solution for you. I just said, like, I'm just a friend who like has professional knowledge. I'm trying to figure this out with you. I'm your advocate and I have your best interests at heart. And so, you know, and we're going to like figure this out together and find a solution that is just as good, if not better than what was originally intended, you know, just because it's being postponed. And so, yeah, I think I loved that sentiment of we are here. This is your customer service hotline and we're here to help and guide you.
Totally.
I love this panel. Good words, guys. Sarah, I'm going to throw it briefly back to you. We've got a question that feels really specific to the world of paper goods. We had kind of a 2-in-1 question. A, what is the best way to let guests know about a postponement? And then at what point do we know it's time to let our guests know that we're postponing officially?
Sure. So a couple things there are some questions that have to be answered just about where you are in the process of invitations. One is, have you already sent out a save the date? So you've sent out a save the date, but you haven't sent out invitations. 2 is you've sent out a save the date and invitations. Or 3, and we're dealing with a lot of this right now, is I've sent out a save the date. I've printed invitations, but I haven't sent them yet. So they're sitting on my dining room table ready to be stuffed. Or the calligrapher was in the middle of doing the envelopes. Where do we go from here? And I would say my number one advice is just, you loved these invitations and you spent time and money to create them. There is no reason, if you have printed invitations, to throw those away or drown yourself in tears that you need to not send them. What we have done for all of our clients, anyone we've worked with over the last 6 months or so, is just offered free, totally complimentary insert cards that can be tucked in with invitations that are designed in the same look and feel, the same fonts, the same color palette, so it feels very cohesive, that just says everything from whatever information you need to get across, so that whether it's actually a new date, sometimes people are saying, hey, hold up, and it goes with the invitation that has the incorrect date. But it's tucked in to say, hey, in light of everything, obviously you can't be there May 30th anymore, so we are changing to July or whatever. Sometimes it just says, hey, stay tuned on our wedding website, things might change. And sometimes, and that's kind of nice, because one issue that we're running into is people holding invitations almost longer than they need to. And then you're in a situation where you're sending your invitations out like 3 weeks before the wedding because you just weren't sure. That's no good either. So it's better just to go ahead and mail drop those. And then finally, we're working with a lot of brides where we're also offering complimentary postcards. So if you've already sent the invitations, let those go and feel great about it. You are getting your guests excited about your event. You are sending out the invitation that you love, this beautiful letterpressed, amazing invitation. People are going to open it and love it. And then, if 4 weeks later we send out a beautiful little postcard that says, haha, we made a change. And that's just extra mail they get. That's cute and adorable. And look at it that way. And you are not the only one. You and every other, person, we're all doing the same thing. And so it's not like guests are surprised at any point. But I would say, I actually feel like paper should be one of the least stressful points in this, because we are just here to help you send that amendment. And what we do is send information. That's what we do for a living, is send information in a beautiful way. So you are just going to be sending a little more information in a beautiful way, and we'll help you figure out the right way to do it. I think for me, the real question is that second question about when. And I would say as soon as you decide. If you do know, hey, we're actually going to change this, then call me. It's time to get started. We're going to design something. We've had a few brides, like Katie said, go ahead and get married. Like, we had a huge event. I mean, they sent out like 500 invitations, and they were getting married in May. And they moved their date up. They got married earlier, and they sent out the actual invitations, even though they were already married, with just a little, insert that we made that said, hey, we got married because of everything that's going on, and we can't wait to celebrate with you later this summer. Stay tuned. We're still going to have this party.
Yeah. That makes me think of too, Sarah. I love, one of my favorite photos to create and deliver for couples is a great paper goods shot. And I keep thinking about these paper goods shots for weddings that have been affected. I think there's going to be something really kind of hilarious, really rich with stories, really layered about those photos, that oftentimes they're a beautiful image to just show off the hard work of that vendor and the collaboration with the couple. But those photos are going to be, I think, more than ever, people are going to print that photo for their wall or find a great way to frame their beautiful paper goods, because there's a million stories behind the invitation suite that now includes that little amendment card.
That's right.
That's updating guests, that I'm really looking forward to spending extra time on those this wedding season.
It's a moment in history that I really do think, that's right. You're going to, people who do like a shadow box, I mean, you're going to have your little, quarantine card that's included. Yes. And I mean, people have all kinds of funny verbiage to make it funny or heartfelt. Like, we loved each other and we were just ready and we couldn't wait for you. So we're going to talk with you later. I mean, I love that. There's all different ways to make it personal and still really cohesive with your brand. I don't know, embrace it. Yeah. We're here to help. And, we decided at the beginning, gosh, we just really don't want to charge people for that. Everything about this is hard right now. Let's give them one easy thing. And we've had brides cry on the phone, like when they're calling about reprinting their invitation. It's like, don't reprint it. We're going to print this for you. We'll take care of it. We'll get it out for you. Let's do this. And it's just a positive thing. And we just want to be there to you know, they're still sending out invitations they love. So why not?
Yeah, I love that. This is something I'd love to hear a little bit from everybody on. We had a bride actually send us in a little bit of her story of the circumstance she's finding herself in. She said, "My plan now is to do a civil service on our original date and a full ceremony and reception next year. I'd love to hear ideas from you all on how to pull together a civil ceremony / elopement in a special way on short notice. The big wedding has already been planned, but now it feels like I'm planning another. Thankfully, much smaller and more intentional, but I feel like I'm running out of steam for planning." That's from Laura in California. And I can just say from a photo perspective, it feels like this may be a theme that we start to see, that small elopements. Katie, you said y'all are seeing this at RT Lodge, that couples are ready to go ahead. This is what we had planned to do. Let's make it legal. Let's make it official. And we'll have our big party next year when we feel safe and free to do so. But for right now, I can say from a photographer's perspective, please invite us into that. We would so love, there's a way to find a safe solution for your photographer to be a part of that. And kind of like the quarantine cards that you're going to see coming from the Happy Envelope, there's going to be something really special about if you're able to include your photographer in that time, in if that's something that you would, a way that you'd like to kind of commemorate and capture the small ceremony that you're planning for ASAP. There could be something really special and something for you to tangibly bring to your larger party that happens next year, that maybe there's a way to showcase photos from the official legal ceremony that you can kind of invite guests in and draw them in. And maybe that's a place to invite a videographer into, to, if your small ceremony is you, your partner, and your officiant, maybe a videographer could be a great option to kind of pull that into a memory to share with people later.
Totally.
I would absolutely send out an announcement after that with that photo. Get one great fun photo. I mean, it could be like a postcard. It doesn't have to be anything formal, but you want to invite your guests into that and say, oh, look at this, it's crazy. But you know, it's just, that's what all of this is about, is inviting your guests in. It's not that you have to plan something necessarily again. It's really just, I hope that this situation, you can really embrace it as a little bit fun and just a little bit of a different viewpoint, instead of feeling like, oh, I've got to plan this whole thing. It's like, maybe lighten up on this one, because it's fun and it's special, but it's really special for those people there. And how do you just like loop in your guests in an easy way? I'd send an announcement with something fun on the back.
Yeah, Lauren, from a florist perspective, does that spark anything for you?
Yeah, I was thinking, I know everyone's doing this sort of, I guess, elopement or smaller ceremony differently, because I know some people are kind of, they may just wear a simple dress. I was going to ask Madelyn as well, like if she knows of clients who are going to wear their like official wedding dress, like both times, or what's going to happen. But that influences me with florals, because my head goes to, what if there's just something fun, like a flower crown or something more casual that you love, but you never feel like you would have an opportunity to wear something like that, because it would be a little more casual for your act than what you would want for your rescheduled, wedding date. Florists, I can speak for myself. I love creating things. So I love collaborating with my clients. And so just thinking of small ways, whether it is a full bouquet and it's just, we try to work out to make your bouquet happen because it's a spring wedding and we bring that to life for you, since you're not going to get to have a spring bouquet for now your rescheduled summer wedding. I think there are a lot of options. But the first one that comes to mind for me, is like maybe an interesting floral accessory that feels unique, and that when it's captured in a photo, it feels special. Like you wouldn't have had that unless this happened. So I agree with Sarah just about how can you actually elevate it and make it more fun for you. So be honest with yourself. What sounds fun for florals, for paper goods, for any of these things? Is there like a cool jumpsuit you were wanting to wear that would look cool with whatever? So yeah, with flowers, we could do something cool on a mantle or little things like that. But the possibilities really are endless, and we're happy to help over here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yes. So this trend of maybe, and there's like a couple of different scenarios, like I said, with your gown, because there's like all these different places it could be, similar to how Sarah was saying, like maybe
Sure.
you've done this, but not this. Like maybe you have your gown, but you haven't done alterations. Right. And in that case, I'd be like, let's wear something different. So maybe you have your gown, you've gone through alterations, you were a spring bride, wear your gown.
Mm-hmm.
Like I always say this in the shop, the gown that like, it's the one you never want to take off. Maybe it doesn't make you cry or whatever, but it's like just the one you don't want to take off. There's a reason you love it. If you've gone through alterations and you're there, wear your gown. If maybe your gown is stuck in alterations, you haven't received your gown yet, then, but that your gown is still going to come in for your postponed event. There's a couple of different options. It depends on your budget and the look that you want. So any dress shop, any local dress shop is going to have off the rack options, which means they have gowns on their floor. They don't have to special order and they can get in. And a lot of the times they're, it's because they've been discontinued. It's because they've just kind of been on the racks for a while and the store wants new inventory in. So you can always grab like an off the rack option that like is a close fit. You can wear that. Maybe if your budget doesn't allow and you like kind of, you spent your budget on your actual dress that you will wear on your postponed date event. I find that a lot of brides, a lot of the times have like two different sides to them and they're trying to figure out which one to bring out during their wedding and they're kind of really torn. And so this could be a great opportunity to still shop local. So go to like a local boutique. We have tons here. Elise Wild Estate. I mean, there's a ton, right? And they have a ton of great white looks right now because it's spring and you get a badass jumpsuit or a really cool midi dress or something and you style it in a way that's true to you, but maybe made you a little nervous like day of and so you just get to bring out that side of you and you can do that in your florals as well. Something that feels more elopement-y and a little more whimsical, but as much as you can pivot that makes sense for your budget while still maintaining true to your postponed day, while trying to like support local as much as you can. And that's kind of what I would suggest is like get in touch with the dress shop. A lot of the times we have things that like aren't even on our floor that could be solutions for you. Yeah. Or we have like two separates that could work for you or whatever it may be. If that's not the case and you're not wanting to do a dress look, then yeah, go to a local boutique. And I know everyone, as far as I know, is doing online orders and doing curbside pickups and call them and figure out a solution. So I find that this could be just another reason for you to get dressed up and be beautiful and be with the one that you love, and maybe a chance for you to show another part of your style or personality.
Yeah, from a rentals perspective, is there anything that comes to mind for people that are now looking at a downsized version of their ceremony?
Yes. We had a bride that a friend of mine, her sister's wedding around the corner was canceled, and she inquired and said, hey, we're going to have this backyard thing, do you have any suggestions? And again, I think we're kind of like the floral piece. I think that the possibilities are so endless. I mean, if you still want a 14-foot diameter bar, we'll do it for you. You can stand in the center, but I think that it's a personal choice. And I think if people still want those glasses and they still want special touches, obviously go for it. Like the dress, do it. Especially if you're, not postponing and then this is it and you just want it to be smaller and more intimate. I think those visions don't have to be lost in all of this chaos. So I think that, I think you could still go for it, maybe on a smaller scale.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. We've had a couple questions that have rolled in since we've been talking, and a lot of people are asking about timing, and I think that is so understandable right now. We're us putting ourselves in your shoes. Each week that passes, we are calculating timing for couples. And one question that came through was for brides who have not yet been postponed, but are right on that border. They're really feeling like, I'm in a gray area here. What would you say is the amount of time before our date we need to make an official decision and start to work with vendors to find a new date? That was from one of your brides, Lauren. And I would imagine a lot of us feel the same way, that whenever you decide to make your official decision, that's your call, but it's never, never too early to be talking to your vendors. Don't feel like you need to wait to talk to us until the decision's been made. That we would love to be your support system through that decision, actually, whether or not that comes to pass.
I'll just share an example that just happened to me this week. And I think we sort of had touched on this. Katie had mentioned it, but as far as like timing goes, I mentioned in the beginning, at least for me, ideally like 3 to 4 weeks would be great if I could know that, just to make sure the flowers aren't paid for or something at that point. But I was going to say, I had a client for closer to the end of May who wasn't ready to officially reschedule, but just went ahead and found a date that worked for all the vendors, and we planned the date. Everybody was good to go for July. And then that way, if the couple just decided, it's closer to, I guess, closer to 2 months or a month and a half before the date, but just shot an email to all the vendors and said, hey, we are going to go with the rescheduled date. So even if right now for June, I'm assuming this person is for a June wedding, for June, what if we had that conversation with your vendors, went ahead and decided on a rescheduled date? Then in beginning of May, if things really are clearing up in a way we weren't expecting, you don't have to worry, we'll keep your date. But then if not, you can just pull the trigger when you're ready to, but we're not scrambling at the end. And we're all just on the same page. I think as a team, just being on the same page is the best case scenario. So that would be my recommendation. If you're questioning it, which is understandable if you are, because those times are crazy, yeah, I would recommend just talking with your vendors, finding a date that works, so that you're comfortable, we're comfortable, and you can make an informed decision when you're ready.
Mm-hmm. I think everybody will be able to sleep a little bit easier if there's a backup date tentatively in place.
Yeah.
And then this kind of ties in, and Katie, I loved your story about the 2 brides that worked on the same day. This ties right in with them. If a couple cannot choose between 2 dates, they're having trouble deciding between 2 dates, how long will you hold potential dates for a client? In event planning, representing a venue, Katie, what has that looked like for you?
So probably 3 weeks ago, I think it's when the CDC said no groups of 50 or more. That Monday was when things sort of kicked into high gear for us, because we heard from 5 brides that day. So thankfully for us, we decided to reach out to every vendor and say, what is your availability for this summer? These are our open dates. And then we made an Excel sheet and said, okay, this florist has these dates, this photographer has these dates. And we were able to reach out to each bride and say, okay, these are the 2 dates that you will have all of your vendors. Mm-hmm. So thankfully for us, we moved quickly enough. And even the ones that have delayed as far as this week, or as recent as this week, we had acted quickly and had talked to their vendors to say it was an option. So we actually were able to hold a date for each couple until they made the call. And so as of right now, we have spoken to all of our brides through June, and if they haven't postponed, they already have a backup date penciled in and on it for us. And we're able to do this. I know it's different for each vendor, but we were able to say we're holding that date indefinitely until we see how things play out. But I know it's different for every vendor, but I think kind of tying in with the last question from that bride and what Lauren said, getting in touch with your vendors and having a date penciled in makes it so much easier for when you do make the call. And I feel like a lot of vendors are willing to do that. I know there are dates that were popular. So like I knew, okay, if this couple doesn't make the decision soon, they might lose their band. I was upfront open with every bride. So I think it is important too as vendors, you know, Erin, if a bride is saying to you, like, can you do July 18th, but you have 3 brides asking you about July 18th, I think it's important to be upfront that like, hey, I also have other brides looking for that date. So, because that kind of helped move things along more quickly for certain brides if they had vendors who only had 1 or 2 dates open this summer. I don't know if that answers your question, but I think unfortunately the theme is if you're thinking about it, start the conversations and move as quickly as you can once you decide.
Mm-hmm. I think, yeah, that's a great summation of everyone that is time specific, every vendor that can only commit themselves to an event per date. Generally, we're going to hold those dates for you as long as we possibly can, but we're hosting a whole list of clients that if we come into conflict, we're going to need to move forward. And if I have a client that approaches me about a date that a previous client has inquired about but not booked, in these times, to respect that people are shuffling and people are trying to find dates that work for a whole cloud of people, I would say I'll reach out to that original inquiring couple and kind of encourage a response on whether or not they want to move forward with that date within a day or two. But I love hearing stories like the couple that totally surrendered to the couple that was their one date, their one opportunity. That I think we're all trying to support each other and we want the best for each other right now. So if we can all adopt that attitude of respectfully committing to or passing on a date so that the most people can have their ideal rescheduled date, that's the dream.
I think another thing from the vendor perspective too that we've run into with trying to move dates, some vendors are more responsive than others. So I think this is the time to reassure your couples by getting them their new contract with their new date or sending that email that says confirmed, you're on my calendar for the new date. Because we have had some vendors who were like, you know, we just want to know that the couple just wants to know that they have you locked in. Please just send us the new contract so we can check this off and they can go to sleep tonight knowing that their wedding is moved with all of their vendors. So I think if your turnaround time for emails is a week, maybe this is a time for you to shorten that and get back to people more quickly, because that is added stress for us and for our couples, for the vendors that are not being responsive right now, because things are moving so quickly and decisions are being made so quickly. I feel like that's really important, is to be responsive. It's kind and it's a way of being generous by getting back to people in a timely manner so they can rest assured things are taken care of.
I think that there's like another piece to that, Katie, transparency. You know, I mean, I think that we all work in like this field of like loveliness and fluff and all that, and we can make that happen. But I think that I always have believed in transparency and what is possible and what is not, just doing events over the years. So I think that this is a really good opportunity to be super transparent with what is possible to your clients. I think they'll appreciate it. I think that they would really be thankful for that.
and I know, like, I've had, a local salon who does a lot of our hair and makeup, and our contact there, she's like, look, I'm a mom, I'm at home, I'm working from home, I'm homeschooling, I can't get you a contract scanned in. So literally she has just sent an email that says, this email confirms that we have moved this wedding to this date. Now that's all, just an assurance, something in writing, something that says we've got you locked in. I think everyone knows that this has its own set of challenges for every company. So I think it's okay as long as you are just communicating like, hey, we've got you locked in, you're good to go.
Right.
Yeah, I definitely, I agree with that too. Because things have changed so rapidly, like at the beginning of March, maybe end of February, all my designers were like, we're on time. None of our fabrics are affected. We're fully functional, please, and they were being honest at that point in time. And 2 weeks later, it was like, we have had to cease operations. Right. And so that's just such a quick turn of what was possible. And now what has been stopped or paused. And so I think running on transparency always, but especially at this time of being upfront with information is really important, being responsive, because we are getting, things are changing day by day, whether it's, okay, yes, we had a couple who kind of was tentative for this date, but another couple came in and secured it because everyone's trying to grab these fall, winter dates. So things are changing day by day. The availability of gowns and designers, and even just fabric swatches and things like that has been changing day to day. And my policy is just, when I know, you will know. Not hiding anything from you about what's possible. Trust me, I'm going to let you know what is not possible, what is possible at that point in time. And again, like, my job is to like protect you and advocate for you. But yeah, I mean, it's just, I think, and being upfront about maybe not having all the answers about everything. And none of us at this point in time can even predict what will happen in the summer, or, I have brides in September who are kind of like, I don't know, should I be thinking about this? And my response now is no, of course not. Everyone stays at home, you'll be fine. But that's not, if that information suddenly changes and we do have to figure out a way to pivot, then we'll do that together. And we'll do that as soon as, for me, it's like at 12 to 16 weeks before your wedding, let's start figuring out a solution. And that timeline changes for everyone. But I do love that when you are working with a single person or a small team or someone who's local, it's human to human connection and interaction, and that transparency and honesty and just partnership and working together is so important.
Mm-hmm. And can I just add that I do think that this whole idea of having to figure out, when do I need to make this decision, also can translate into almost the creative process for a lot of us and how we're working. And so I've already spoken to a few brides who were their original date is June or even July, and they're like hesitating now. They were getting ready to get started on invitations. And my answer truly is get started. Yeah. Because for one thing, you don't want to be in a super rush should, end of May come, all is well, and you can actually just drop ship. Let's just do this, and you can get married in July and you're fine. But then also more time for creative people to do their creative process and for you to participate in that creative process is never going to be a bad thing. You're never going to regret that you had a little more time to do those proofs or to make those amendments or to see that alteration. So the difference between July or November, get started. You're still having a wedding. Let's go ahead and get this show on the road.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think if you're one of those brides who maybe doesn't have their gown yet, like, so many shops, I mean, not just mine, but like every local shop I know and all the shops I talk to in Atlanta, I mean, you know, they're doing virtual appointments, which is something totally different and new, but it allows you to, like, I have one today, you know, it allows you to still get started and still like see shapes and see fabrics and even a lot of your bridal appointment. And I'm sure most of the first conversations and consultations with all of you is like, what am I doing? And so if you can even have a video conference or a phone call or a conversation with those vendors just to break the ice and get that started, that's huge. And that way you can start spending more time in that creative process and starting to move through those ideas because you have this nice foundation of information and understanding.
Absolutely. Thinking about timing, a question that I've heard floating out there has been from couples that have recently gotten engaged or are getting engaged as we speak, that have gotten engaged during quarantine. I think there's almost been a feel of we're engaged, times are wild, we will make a decision about when and where down the road. And I would just say, as a little photography related tidbit, and I would imagine this would relate to a lot of us, what we're seeing basically is our spring and summer seasons are being shifted. And for the most part, the goal is to keep vendor teams intact and to shift to fall winter. But in some cases, that's shifting over to 2021 as well. And some encouragement that I've been giving to newly inquiring couples has been just to get a sense of vendor availability and timeline sooner rather than later, because I want my newly inquiring clients to have their top choice of date as well, and for the process to look how they'd like, and that the fact right now is that this crisis is affecting our availability for fall and winter and even into next year. So to all the brides asking about, when do I pull the trigger, to newly engaged couples asking about, is it even the right time to think about a date? I would say now and yes.
Yes. I'd say more than ever, actually, because for the reason Erin was saying, it's almost more than ever you should start a conversation, because people, like, the way the timeline usually flows of how much people's availability will be based on the time of year you're inquiring is very different. And I can speak, at least from my end, you know, I'm happy to, if you know, I just had someone I worked with for an October wedding, and they originally were going to have, I'll just use table examples, like 20 tables. And then things started getting really crazy, but they hadn't put a deposit down yet. And they were having concerns that maybe in October, even just like, what if we had less guests? So we decided, you know, to lower the amount just from the get-go for what their design plan was, knowing 2 to 3 months before their wedding, we can reevaluate. And if they want to add on, we can absolutely add on. So and from my perspective, it'd be better to go ahead and, instead of thinking, okay, I guess we'll get married in a year and a half from now or a year from now, when you really want to be married or have your wedding in the fall, you could go ahead and get on someone's calendar, start the design conversation. And we have a lot of, at least I have kind of a little more creative freedom right now to spend conversation, you know, have conversations with you. Typically right now I would have time for consultations, but it'd be very limited. So, you know, if you just want to start a conversation with a florist, like, reach out, you know, just by having a conversation with a vendor doesn't mean you're signing on the dotted line. And any questions you have, or, you know, you can always just email and say, can we have a consultation, and have an open conversation during that time of what would this look like. But we're still trying to move on with, you know, filling up our seasons. And so I can speak for myself. I would welcome those, you know, conversations, even concerns about booking. yeah, but definitely filling up because of reschedules. So would love to talk.
Yeah. I think like Sarah said, which I think she was maybe about to say, but you always spin it positive, and you're still planning a wedding.
Yeah.
I've seen a ton of engagements.
Yeah.
I've got my eye on all the hashtags, but like I've seen so many at this time, and you're still planning a wedding.
Yeah.
And, usually you do that, and maybe I've seen some tighter timelines, but it's normal to plan a year in advance. And if obviously we all follow the proper procedures, then the latter half of this year will be perfectly fine and safe, and obviously next year. So make your mood boards and reach out to your vendors and get excited. I know that maybe feels a little conflicting because of what's happening in the world, but in your world, you're allowed to be excited, and you're still allowed to plan and do it in a safe way, and do it in a virtual way, or have a conversation. Like Lauren said, we are finding ourselves with a little less time, maybe manning our shops and storefronts, and actually being on site. And we have the bandwidth to indulge in those conversations and have a virtual appointment before your actual appointment, or look at your mood board and talk through things. So yeah, get excited. You're still planning your wedding. You're engaged. And now you are just maybe looking at a little more time up until that point. And I think that you still have every right to be excited and get started on that journey and start reaching out to the people that make you excited.
Yes, totally.
And that is exactly, I just want to piggyback on that and just mention briefly that probably most vendors, in 2020 have pretty robust websites where they've got tons of samples, and there are lots of things you can look through. We have all kinds of consultations, phone consultations with brides all over the country anyway. So this is just not, it's like, so you can't come into our studio.
Yeah.
Bummer. But welcome to the rest of the world where people, are constantly doing this online. Samples on website, Pinterest. RT Lodge, have you looked at their Pinterest? It's unbelievable. Like, there are so many ways to fall in love with vendors and see everything that you want to see without just even being stuck on like, oh, I'm looking at the same things on Pinterest. Actually look at the websites of the people you're interested in and set up Zoom calls, that's what we're here for. Everyone's working with a new world. So I don't think you have to be sad that you can't walk into a store.
Agreed. Yes. I'm going to, one more on that.
No, go.
One more, because this is
important.
It's so important. Is now you have time to do your research. So every vendor, every provider is not created equal. And that's not in a weird, like better, worse way. That's in a what we offer kind of way. Whether it's the kind of services or the rentals that you're offering, or the types of paper, or whatever it may be, there's levels and there's dynamics to it. And so, from my perspective, like I carry the designers that I carry. So if you come in here and you're like, where's Vera Wang? We don't got it. And so having this extra time to really just sit down and do your research is incredible. And looking at what these vendors offer and the types of services they offer, and if that aligns with your vision and your budget and all of these other things, and having that time on the front end will really allow things to go smoothly, so that you and your vendor are both aligned in your expectations.
Absolutely. And Madelyn, you've touched on this and sprinkled it in throughout, but kind of one more bridal specific question. Should I expect any changes in the timeline for my wedding dress production?
Depends. So I also I had to move to my desk because my laptop was losing charge, and I have this like lovely drawing, but I realized I have like a bum right here and some feet. So it depends. It depends on, first of all, my policy is no news is good news. So if I have not reached out to you at this time with the date that your gown was supposed to come in and how soon that was before your wedding, we're looking good. So it totally depends on, where you've gotten your dress, how that store is doing, where their designers are sourcing, if those designers have stopped production. So if it's my bride specifically, I have reached out to all my brides if there is, I don't like to really use the word concern, but if there is a moment that we need to pivot or figure out a different game plan, obviously, like I said, that changes from week to week. So I have some designers who've stopped. I have some designers who've continued. Maybe my designers who have stopped, those are my late fall and winter brides. So those aren't raising flags to me. And my designers that have continued are my summer brides. So I feel good about that. But maybe it's vice versa and we're trying to figure it out. So I think that regardless of where you've gotten your dress and when your wedding is, because of the state of the world in general, I mean, like not even Amazon is doing their Prime right now. Yeah, I think that you can expect a delay if you haven't received your gown yet, if your provider has reached out to you and sort of let you know. The number one thing for you to do is not to like freak out in your mind. And it's just to call or just to email and say, hey, I'm a little nervous. You know, I ordered a gown 2 months ago and my wedding's in 5 months. And like, where does that stand? So don't stay up at night being concerned. Like reach out and allow your vendor to give you peace of mind and to tell you, I'm not concerned now. If in 4 weeks the situation is the same or different and it affects you, I will call you and we'll work together. And that's really how I'm handling it. But I think that sort of stirring in that what if situation, although it's easy to do, we're here and we want to give you peace of mind and we want to give you assurance. So yeah, I think most likely delays are going to occur. However, it's different for every single bride, every gown, every designer, every fabric, every whatever, just as I'm sure it kind of is with rentals as well. Like those are all coming from different sources and different places, and it depends on what it is, how soon it's coming in for your wedding, when your wedding is. Again, best piece of advice is to reach out to your provider and just give them your honest thoughts and tell them what you're thinking, and you guys work together if it becomes necessary to pivot.
We are going to attempt to wrap up, but I just wanted, if there's any final tidbits that it feels like we haven't had a moment to plug in for couples, for clients, for families of couples right now, just any parting wisdom or encouragement for couples that are planning right now and for the people that are supporting them right now.
I think that we're all in this together. You know, it's not like a Southern problem or a West Coast problem or whatever it may be. So I think that the silver lining will be the human kindness that comes out in helping everyone just hold their hand. And again, I can't wait to hug people. But, just remember that your client, you're a bride, you're not alone, you're not the only one that this is happening to, and everyone is hopefully going to be understanding, is my hope for all of this.
I loved what we were chatting about this before we went live today, that just there's this whole round of weddings that are getting postponed, moved, tweaked, and Beth was saying earlier, like, we are going to have some great parties when this is all over.
Yeah. We're going to be really elevated.
Oh gosh, elevated is the word, but we just can't wait to celebrate with all of our clients, and just the joy that is going to be on these dance floors at these receptions. Unbelievable.
It gives me chills. I just got chills.
Yes.
So
we can't wait to be there with you and support you through it. I loved what Madelyn said earlier about couples. Look at your vendor team that you've assembled. Look at this little grid that we have right here. We would love to be your hotline. We would love to be a resource for you. All of us are kind of tagged and linked together online. And if you have any questions specific to each of our fields, we would be more than happy to just be a listening ear, support you. This is a confusing time, and there is a solution. We're here to help. So yeah, please feel free to reach out to any vendor that you see here. We'd love to answer questions for you. We're also we've recorded this session and we're going to leave it up online so that I think everybody just did such a sweet job of just including some really key points for couples that are pivoting right now. So please feel free to return to this and as a resource to support you.
Thank you for putting this together, Erin.
Thanks for
Yes,
having
thank
us.
you.
Of course. Thank you all so much. Love to everybody and love to all of our couples out there that are in this new season.
Bye.
Okay, we're all done.